Você está ouvindo o podcast Estudar Direito pelo Mundo. Neste podcast você aprenderá com Klaus como você pode alcançar o sonho de realizar seu mestrado em Direito fora do Brasil. Envie suas perguntas e depoimentos no Instagram @klauslau.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining another podcast, Estudar Direito pelo Mundo. I'm your host, Klaus, and I'll be speaking today with San Morales, asking about how it works to become a lawyer in Mexico. Super excited to know about this beautiful country we have. And now, welcome, San Morales. Thanks, Sam, for accepting to be in the podcast today. I know that Sam is a lawyer in Mexico. He's also a graduate from BYU Law on the LLM program. So would you start introducing yourself a little bit better for us, Sam?
Of course, yes. I'm San Morales, as you just told. I'm from Mexico. I've been practicing law in Mexico for the last 12 years. And I've spent the last almost 3 years here in the United States. I moved into the United States because I was invited to study a master's degree. And after that, I just stayed here for probably not for so long, but I'm working right now here in the United States.
That's awesome. Well, one of the main things that that we want to know in this podcast is really how does it work to become a lawyer in your country? And we know it's so different everywhere in the world. So we would like to know how does it work in Mexico, and maybe starting from law school. How does law school work in Mexico? Can you get into law school right after high school? How does that work?
Yes, actually, that's how it is. You can choose whatever field that you want to study right after high school. So law school, it starts right after you graduate from high school. You decide to go to any college. You can study medicine, you can study engineering, and lawyering is one of the careers. We call them carreras. Okay, that's the carrera, which is like basically is a law degree or a bachelor in law. Okay.
Fantastic. That's very similar to Brazil. How long does it take for you to graduate with a law degree, with a bachelor?
It all depends on the program and the school itself. Like there are some schools, like in the most parts of the world, there's this university, and they have like law, and they have the other careers, and usually those schools that have like many majors, they hold like 4-year programs. And there are some schools that their specialty is only law, and they have like 5-year programs, but it's like very specialized only in law.
That's so interesting. Something else that I'm always interested in, that in Brazil, it's very common for us to go to college at night through our undergrad years and even through graduate school. We go to school at night and we work during the day. So is it common for people to work full-time in Mexico while they're in university?
It is common. The problem is that in Mexico, especially in the legal field, it's very hard to find, for example, a law firm that wants to pay you well while you're studying. Like they do like kind of stipends just for the transportation. And so it is very hard for a student. For example, if you want to get married, you want to live alone, it is very difficult for you to get enough money to pay for those things if you're a student, because almost no law firms are willing to pay you well or pay you enough to afford those things. Like probably you can afford like the food and the transportation, your snacks, and that's it. Like things for a regular student.
And I find a lot of relation to that. I feel like it's a general experience in Brazil is that if you want to work in the field of law, so what happens is that people are studying law, but they are doing work related to other areas. That was the experience in my university, at least. So I know that it can be very different anywhere you go in the world, or even in Brazil, you surely will have different experiences, and maybe people who studied 10 years ago, that was different. But this experience I'm living right now as I study is that several of my colleagues, they are not interning or working with legal related things, just simply because of that, because the internships, all of these possibilities, they actually don't pay you enough to pay for tuition, for example. So people will be working as salesmen, or they'll be working at other things that are not related to law, but that would probably pay enough for you to be able to have a living. Or I know some people who actually will have two jobs so that they can afford being in law school and also living on your own, etc. So I feel like that's a common experience for us. That's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
as we move along, yeah, if you have any comment, go ahead.
No, I think it is, this situation is most common in Latin American countries. I think that's the reality.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, a bit different than what we see here, right? In the
Yes,
States.
very, very different.
Moving along with that, in Brazil, we can sit for the bar exam when we are in our last year of law school. So we can already sit for the bar while you are a student, and then you can, as you graduate, you can submit your papers and get sworn in. I was wondering about Mexico. Do you have many different steps until you can actually become a lawyer?
Yes.
Is your bar exam different?
Yes. So the general thing is that universities have the power, have the authority to grant you your degree. Okay. So the state has this, like the Ministry of Education, we call it Secretaría de Educación Pública, and they are the ones in charge of granting you the license to practice, but it doesn't have anything to do with your capability or your abilities or lawyering skills. It just depends on that you finish the course. Like you are eligible to practice law just because you graduated from a law school or from a university, but they don't like require you to know specific fields or take an exam. Like it all depends on the university. Like there are universities, usually the public schools, they do exams, or they do this, like you need to write a thesis, you need to defend your thesis in front of like other people, like some high ranked scholars, like very similar like how you get your PhD here in the United States. But usually that's what public universities do. Okay, but at the end, it all depends on like how long did you study. You have all your credits. If it is a private school, it all depends on money. You paid your credits, you're eligible to practice law, and that's something I think that is the cause of many bad things that are occurring in the legal profession in Mexico. Is that government is issuing permission for schools to open just like some campuses everywhere. Like I can just rent a house, and I have my program in like my written program. I hire some professors, I hire some lawyers, like just like a part-time job. They teach law, and I have the authorization from the government to issue certificates from my law school. So the result is that there are many like thousands of lawyers that are practicing. Usually they're not good lawyers. There may be some exceptions, but usually like these schools offer like 2-year programs, or they offer you to graduate just with your law experience. Like probably you're not a lawyer, but you've been working for a law firm, like doing some paperwork, like as a paralegal, and they offer you to graduate just with your experience, like 3-year experience. And that is ridiculous, but it is happening right now in Mexico.
Wow, that's very different. That actually made me interested. It seems like each country has some rules regarding international students, and if this is a very specific and niche subject, so if you haven't heard too much about it, don't worry. was just wondering if you've heard about how would it work for an international student to become a lawyer in Mexico, or for an international attorney to become an attorney in Mexico?
Well, but you know what? Like, this is true. In the end, when you are practicing, you can tell the kind of lawyer that you are, like, and your clients can tell the kind of lawyer that you are. Like, usually those lawyers that come from those type of schools that I've been describing, they do like the regular job, like cheap job or paperwork, or how to say that, like administrative like procedures. That's what they do, because they don't have the skills, or they don't have this confidence that law school, like a regular law school, gives you by interacting with the professors and other students and highly ranked attorneys in, you know, the internships and all this stuff. Like, at the end, it makes a difference, and the client knows the difference. They can tell the difference. They can notice the difference.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Would you happen to know how somebody from another country could start to practice in Mexico?
Can you say that again?
Yes, of course. Would you happen to know how somebody from another country could practice law in Mexico? Like, if I wanted to have a license to practice in Mexico, only if you heard about it.
You know, it's a very interesting question, because now that I'm here in the United States, it is very hard for us foreign lawyers, foreign attorneys, to find a place in the legal community, because you have the bar, and you need to study, and you need to pay lots of money, you know, to sit for the bar, for bar prep courses, and the all these payments you need to make, and all this time you need to study just to sit for the bar and take the bar exam. And it's very hard to find a place. But usually, if you're in Mexico and you come from another country, you will be like very welcome. Which is very interesting is that, yes, you would need to, you should need to have a license to practice in Mexico, but usually they don't require you. If you are in a law firm, and I know that you come from Brazil and you have the license to practice in Brazil, I will use that just because I need you in my team, and it looks very well in my firm, just for my clients to know that I have a Brazilian lawyer in my team, in my law firm, you know, and you will be welcome to practice, and I will teach you everything. But usually, probably you won't appear, like your name won't appear in the paperwork, in the settlement demands, but for sure you will be very, very welcome to be in my law firm. So it's not very uncommon to have foreign lawyers, especially from Central America and South America. We have many like Venezuelan lawyers, so Colombian lawyers in the legal community in Mexico, and they don't have to study like an additional degree in Mexico to be allowed to practice, because usually when you are a foreign attorney, you are not interested in family law. Like, you will be interested in probably like trademarks or intellectual property, all this type of practices that are more like internationally accepted in practice, you know?
Very, very interesting, yeah. Because I know some countries like Brazil and the US, they have very strong regulations that are very, very much enforced regarding, you know, the practice of law by unauthorized persons and stuff. So
Yes.
It's always interesting for me to learn about that.
I mean, in theory, it's pretty much the same in every country. Like, you need to be authorized to practice. But if you're a foreign lawyer, I will take advantage of that degree that you have and the knowledge that you have to expand my practice or the services I offer, because I'm going to use the expertise that you bring from your country and offer this to the clients in Mexico.
Perfect. Yeah, I totally understand that. Well, that's incredible. That's awesome. That's really interesting to know. That's very, very interesting. Well, as we move along, so that's something that's very interesting. And then, you know, in Brazil, like we we don't really have, even though when we sit for the bar, we have to choose an area of specialty. You become a lawyer, you can practice any kind of law once you become a lawyer. Is it the same thing in Mexico, or is there something that you need to have like an additional or something? Because I know for example, in the States, you have like IP law, right? Intellectual property has its own bar and etc. So do you have any specialty examples in Mexico?
Yes, we do. But I mean, we have always the contrast with the United States. Like here in the United States, you take like the mandatory classes for 1Ls, 2Ls. And usually starting your second year, you choose the classes that will help you in the practice that you're choosing since you are in law school. And you do the internships in law schools, in law firms that do like the kind of law that you want to practice in the future. So in Mexico, I think like in most of the Latin American countries, you take the 4-year program or 3 or 5-year programs, and you take all the classes. Like it doesn't matter what will be your focus in practice, you know? In theory, you are able to practice any kind of law if you are in Mexico, just because you took all those classes. You don't have mandatory classes. You take the whole program, and you are eligible to work in any field of the law. What is true is that usually, like in practice, if you want to be specialized in a particular field, you take like the LLMs or a maestria, okay, like master degrees. That's usually what you do to have a specialty. That gives you more credibility for your clients, for the law firms that you want to work for. If you have a specialty or you have a maestria for that specific field, I think that's an advantage. But you know, the reality is that you work along with when you're practicing, the life and the practice is taking you to the path, and you learn a lot. Like I for example, when I graduated or when I was in law school, I really loved like the criminal law, or Derecho Penal. I love that. I found it like very, very exciting, and I was very passionate about all the theory, the criminal law theory. But when I started working, and I saw the reality of being, you know, in jail, dealing with all these bureaucratic people, and dealing with, you know, the prosecutor offices and officers and police officers and all this corrupted system, I realized that I didn't want to do that. So I switched to another path, and I did tax law. So when my first job was in the tax law firm, it was a very, very good law firm. They paid very well, but then I decided to. I saw a position that they were offering in a public office, like in a notario público or public notary, which is a very, very big deal in Mexico. Here in the United States, anyone can be a notary public. You don't have to be a lawyer. But in Mexico, being a notary public, it's almost like a nobility title, you know, like because this institution, the notary public, is this institution that came with the Spanish people, you know. They brought that. It is an institution. There is a college of notary publics, and it's like they are rich attorneys, and I wanted to switch to that path, so I switched to notary public things. I worked there for 4 years. When I graduated from school, like I decided I'm going to start practicing alone, and I decided to use what I learned in the tax law firm, what I learned in the notary public. Now, notary public, you know, they do tax law, they do property law, they do like business organizations, they do pretty much everything. And I use all that to create my own practice, which is corporate law, and like consulting for companies, businesses. And I believe myself to be specialized in that, but I didn't take any course in that. Like I didn't take any master degree in corporate law. I just happened to be good at it. Okay.
Nice. That's incredible. It's always exciting to hear about the careers of people, and I always like to learn more about it. So that's great. That's really nice that you had this opportunity and kind of how things developed for you. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, as we move towards the end of our podcast today, I was wondering if you'd have any, I don't know, any words of wisdom for those who are, getting started in the field of law. If you have anything that you'd like to mention.
Yes. I didn't think of this, like, just for your audience, like, we didn't talk about this in advance, like, so this is happening simultaneously, so I didn't have time to think about the questions. But yes,
sorry
I
about
think
that.
yeah. So I there's something that I was thinking, like, I spent the last month in Mexico. I spent the last month in Mexico. In this experience in Mexico was very, very refining to me, because I had the opportunity to go to some places where I started practicing as a lawyer, and I was remembering a lot, like, all this, like, path, which is like a tough road, that we need to walk in Latin America to become lawyers. And I was thinking about this, that most of all lawyers or law students, not lawyers, but law students, there is a point when we question ourselves if we are doing the right thing, And I talked to many of my friends, and all of us have felt the same. Like, when we were after the first year of law school, we started questioning if that was the right path, because it seems to be really tough. It seems to be like very, very hard to think on a future, like a successful future, when you're a law student, especially when you have like many lawyers, you have thousands of law schools. Like in Mexico, there's one state that has more law schools than Canada. And we're talking about one of the smallest states in Mexico. Like, we're talking like not even the size of Mexico City. It's a whole state, has more law schools than Canada. So it is very, very difficult to find hope when you are a law student. But when you know people, or you, like, just like this exercise that you're doing, Klaus, that getting to know other lawyers, networking, asking about some career paths that are possible. I mean, the whole vision, or you have a wider vision of what you can achieve being a lawyer. Like, when I was in law school, I could only think like in family law, like in criminal law, like in, business law. But I mean, the most common things. And then you have the pictures, you have the movies, you have the all these Netflix series about lawyers, and you have in your mind these bad examples of lawyers. And some people are okay with that, but when you are a person of principles, I mean, you question: is that what lawyering is about? Like, is that what practicing law is about? Like, always just trying to look for the loopholes, trying to look for what is wrong with the law. But when you interact with other lawyers, like real practicing lawyers, not other law students, but with real lawyers, in successful lawyers, and that are working in other fields that besides criminal or family law, is when the magic happens. Like, you start to create your own dreams, you start to create your own practice, you start to think about the possibilities and the chances and the innovation opportunities that you have in the field of law, what you can achieve. So it is. I love being a lawyer. Like, it's been a really hard path to me. Like, I was remembering. So that was my point. When I was in Mexico, I was driving in some places that I remember when I remember one day that I didn't have money to bring to my home at the end of a week. And I remember sitting outside one of the subway stations crying, man. And I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm in Mexico City. I'm not even from Mexico City. I'm studying. I graduated from law school like 6 months ago, and I don't know when I will see the light, in this practice. And I remember those kind of experiences were like very, very sad to me, but refining at the same time. That now when you look back, like you say, everything was worth it. Like being a lawyer is very different, cause being a lawyer is not like any other practices, any other careers. Like I think doctors, or medical doctors, physicians, and lawyers, I would say are the most important careers in this world. And I'm not saying this because I'm a lawyer. I'm saying this because we have in our hands like very specific hands. We need to protect life and liberty. Okay, doctors have the health and the life in their hands. We have life and liberty in our hands. So that is why it's very, very important to have very clear in our minds what we want to do, because it's not about us. It's not about getting money. I like to think about law as a business. Yes, I love it. I love to think about law as a business, but also it can be a business, and it can be like very good. It can be rewarding when you think of it like you have in your hands the liberty of a person, the freedom of a person, and the life of a person, because that's what law is about. It's about creating this balance in the world, So that's all I wanted to say.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I don't think I could have heard anything better. So I guess I'm glad we didn't plan this too much in advance. Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for your time, for your willingness to be here speaking today. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. And I hope to see you soon in another episode. Take care and bye-bye.
Bye.